Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sara Lihz and I am back with a super cute card project for you today. We are going to make a little off-roading vehicle driven by a cat. I think many of us who have had cats know that sometimes they can boss their way into just about anything. So this is the Doodle Car. It's inspired by Craft Roulette, and so you can turn this into the crafty police or just the regular police or a taxi. And then this is the Paw-rents stamp and die combo. I love that they come together. You can make a cat or a dog and then some really fun sentiments. To fill in the rest of our scene, we'll use the rainbow shaker, the embossed edge hills and slopes, and then the puffy cloud stencil. You guys, this might be my most used crafty tool, period. Like, I use this for everything. So I have an A2 panel of white cardstock and I have just laid down my clouds over the top of it and I will start blending. I use my blending buddy and I start on the stencil and I pull softly and gently upward to create that blue peeking out from behind the clouds, and then I just keep rotating. I'll start with a few of the long edges, but I use the short edges too. I just try to take one of the puffs on the end and line it up with a cloud that I already have stenciled, and it creates these lovely little valleys amongst my other lines of clouds, and very quickly you get this beautiful cloudy panel. For my grass, I have a scrap of green cardstock and I'm just bringing in my card to get my placement right, to figure out how much grass I need. And then I will use this die from the hills and slopes to cut my grass. One edge will create that modern embossed edge that you see on a lot of Trinity dies, and the other edge won't. I actually went with the side that didn't leave that edge. Yes, you could cut that by hand, but you guys, I always end up cutting off way too much or some kind of crazy slope, and this was easier. I have a little more cardstock than I need so that I can get the angle of that slope just perfect, and then I'll flip it over and trim off the excess on the back, and you'll never know that when I laid it down, it looked all cattywampus. So here's my car, and I cut out that main car piece, and then I used the sort of window door situation die to cut out a piece from the big car. That way you can see all the way through, like you can see through both sets of windows. Then I'm going to start working on my cat. So the cat doesn't stamp an entire cat image. It's just sort of the details of the cat, the legs and some of the fur. And so I stamped that first, and when I went to die cut it, I was having a hard time lining it up. So I used the die to cut it out of a piece of printer paper, and then I lined that up on top of my stamped piece, and I'll just tape it temporarily to that piece of cardstock, and I know exactly what it's going to look like when I run it through my die cutting machine. So I'm going to tape down 3 edges, and then my die will fit in kind of like a puzzle piece. Like I just wiggle it until it pops right in there and it cuts perfectly. I'll just keep that piece of printer paper in with my stamp set, and then it'll be perfect every time. I've used a separate stamp to add the face to the cat, and then there are a few accessories you can add as well. So there's a collar and like a little dangling piece for the collar. There's a tiny little nose that's super cute that I cut from some pink cardstock. I really love these little details that give some extra dimension and interest to our cat, because otherwise this is a really simple, it comes together very quickly. And so to me, these little extra touches are certainly worth it. This cat and the dog fit beautifully in our car. So I didn't want to put the car together until I had the cat, because really they're all going to kind of get glued together. I'm starting by just taping the window door piece in with a little bit of Scotch tape, just because it's going to be easier to work with everything at the same time. And then I'm figuring out where I want the cat. Is it going to be in the back seat? Is she going to be driving? Is she going to be driving while facing the wrong direction? And that felt appropriate, right? So I have my cat facing kind of out the window, but headed backwards, and the car is going forwards, and there's no street. We're off-roading. All of that felt very familiar to me. We used to have a couple of cats, and they were very different from each other, but they were both quite a handful. Like, I am just imagining them here, thinking that they're in charge. So then I'm going to go ahead and add my wheels onto my car, just so I know top to bottom, like how tall is my car, make sure I get my placement right on my card, and then I'll flip the whole thing over and I can add it with glue as a single piece instead of trying to like mix and match pieces straight onto the card panel. There are some extra pieces that you can add into the wheels here. So I have cut those out of white and then a really dark gray cardstock. They are a little cattywampus, like the wheels are sort of goofy doodly and then the inside pieces as well. So I just looked for the straightest edge on each of those pieces and it was pretty easy to line everything up. If you check out Trinity's website, there is tons of inspiration on what to do with this car, whether you want to make a taxi or a police car, or just make it a fun little car for your scene. A lot of your stamped images and critters will fit into this car, and I love that. It's a great way to kind of mix and match and get new looks out of things you've had in your stash for a while. So I am just finishing up our car with the headlights and taillights and a side mirror. There are seats you can put in the car, but I forgot. You guys, I forgot. The cat was already in there, so I left them off, but certainly you could do that. You could put some vellum over the windows or a little bit of acetate. Carrie Rhodes has a video where she turned it into a shaker inside those windows. So many fun things. So I am using the rainbow shaker, and I showed it to you and then I kind of flipped the package over. When I cut out my bows, I cut whole sections of cardstock. So there's normally 6 bows in this rainbow. I'm a little type A. I want it to start with pink. Well, I'd already used the pink one a couple times to make a rainbow. So I decided instead to just use a 4. So I could start with a pink that I had already cut, use up some of those pieces that were sitting in the back of the packaging. But if I only use 4, the cloud is a little wide. So I just found where one of those puffy pieces would fit best if I sort of clipped it there, and I rounded the edge and it was perfect. I will say that rainbow, I put a lot of glue on there and glued it to my craft mat. Does anybody do that? It happens to me more often than you might think. So I've grabbed a bunch of stamps out of our stamp set and I'm adding them to some white cardstock in my mini Misty. I have Happy Meowther's Day, You're the Best, for real. And they are all separate. And then they each have their own die to bubble cut them out. And it's this beautiful, close cut around those words. And I love it. So I'm going to put Happy Meowther's Day, You're the Best on the front. I'm thinking of my sister, right? She's the only one of my siblings or family members that still has a cat. And she is like full on cat mom. And I think she'll really like this. And then on the inside, we'll add the fur reel and it'll be a nice like punny, funny something when you open it up, an extra surprise. I just love a great punny sentiment. And I think Trinity does that better than almost anybody. As I'm adding these to my card, I started by gluing down Meowther's Day because it's the longest and it's 2 pieces. But once I get that in place, everything else is a single piece and it's really easy to center and try to make sure that I get the vertical placement correct as well. So I am just going to put the You're the Best right below where I know I need to glue it. And then when I add my line of glue, I know it's the right length and I will pick it up with my little pokey tool and it will work perfectly. You may have seen me at one point, I was having a really hard time picking things up with my pickup stick. This happens to me sometimes. Every single time it's because there's glue on it. So I just take my fingernail and I very gently scrape off the very top layer from the wax tip and it works beautifully after that. I forget to do it sometimes and I start struggling and I can't figure out why. It's because there's glue on it. So if that's happening to you, go ahead and give that a try. To finish off my card, I'm going to add a little sparkle. I got a touch of glue on top of the teal bow from the rainbow. And this is how I try to hide that. And then I was like, well, obviously it was meant to be that way. Anyway, the cloud is all sparkly. So that is our card for today. I hope you find some inspiration here, that you'll give something like this a try. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.